The first sign was a receipt from a bank I didn't recognize. It had fallen out of Mark's jacket pocket when I was doing laundry, something he'd specifically told me not to do anymore because he'd handled his own clothes. But old habits die hard after 15 years of marriage. First National Bank of Charleston. We lived in Portland. We didn't have accounts in Charleston. We didn't even know anyone in Charleston. I smoothed out the receipt on the laundry room counter. A deposit slip, $50,000. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. After 15 years of marriage to Mark Chen, I'd learned to recognize patterns. And this was the beginning of something. I folded the receipt carefully and put it back in his pocket. Then I did what I'd always done. I handled the laundry, made dinner, and asked about his day when he came home from his law firm. Busy, he said, barely looking up from his phone. The Peterson merger is killing me. Poor baby, I said, setting his favorite meal in front of him. Salmon teriyaki, miso soup, cucumber salad. The same dinner I'd made every Tuesday for 15 years because Mark liked routines. He grunted in response, already typing again. I watched him eat, this man I'd married at 22. Still handsome at 40, with just enough gray at his temples to look distinguished. Still wearing the Armani suits I'd taught him to appreciate. Still treating me like furniture, useful, necessary, but ultimately replaceable. I'm thinking of redecorating my office, I said casually, maybe something more modern. He mumbled, not listening. I thought I'd start with new filing cabinets, digital locks, very secure. That got his attention. His eyes flicked up for just a second. Why would you need secure filing cabinets? Oh, tax documents, warranties, important papers. Speaking of which, do we have any accounts I don't know about? For tax purposes? Why would we have accounts you don't know about? His voice was carefully neutral, but I'd lived with Mark long enough to recognize the slight tension in his jaw. I don't know, that's why I'm asking. Janice mentioned something about offshore accounts at book club, tax havens or something. Janice is an idiot, he said flatly. We don't have offshore accounts. Of course not, I agreed. More soup. That night, while Mark stayed late at the office, again, I did what any modern wife would do. I started paying attention. Not snooping exactly, just noticing. Like how Mark had changed his phone password. After 15 years of using his birthday, suddenly he needed facial recognition. Like how our joint investment account was slowly decreasing, nothing dramatic. A few thousand here, a few thousand there. Market volatility, Mark explained when I asked. Like how he'd started having lunch with his brother Dylan every week. They'd barely spoken in 5 years, and suddenly they were best friends again. Like how he'd insisted on handling all our finances himself. You focus on your little business, he'd said about my interior design firm. Let me worry about the real money. My little business that I'd built from nothing. My little business that now had 3 employees and a client list that included half the Fortune 500 companies in Portland. My little business that he'd never bothered to ask about, assuming it was just a hobby. 2 months after the Charleston receipt, I made a decision. I called my college roommate, Patricia Kim. Patty, it's Jessica. I need a favor. Anything, honey? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I just need the name of that forensic accountant you used during your divorce. The really good one. Silence. Then, oh honey, is Mark? I don't know yet. That's what I need to find out. She gave me the name. Hannah Reeves. She's expensive, Patty warned, but she finds everything. And I mean everything. Good, I said. That's what I need. I met Hannah at a coffee shop downtown, far from Mark's office. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes behind designer glasses. Mrs. Chen, she said, shaking my hand firmly, Patricia told me you might need my services. I think my husband is hiding assets, I said without preamble. I need to know what, where, and how much. What makes you think he's hiding assets? I told her about the receipt, the changed passwords, the decreasing accounts, the sudden brotherly bonding. Hannah nodded. Classic signs. How long have you been married? 15 years. Kids? No, we tried for years, but I shrugged. Mark said it was for the best. Less complicated. For him, certainly. Prenup? No, we were young and in love. Mark was just starting law school. Which you pay for? I blinked. How did you know? You mentioned you have your own business. Successful women who marry young often support their husbands through school. Let me guess. He promised to support you once he made it big. Something like that. And did he? We lived well. Nice house, nice cars. But my business was always extra. My money was fun money, while his was real money. Hannah made notes. Oregon is a community property state with equitable distribution. Everything acquired during marriage is split fairly, not necessarily equally. But hidden assets, that changes things. Judges don't like spouses who hide money. So you'll help me. I'll do better than help. I'll find every penny he's trying to hide. But Mrs. Chen, I need you to understand something. Once we start this, we're committed. And you need to act completely normal. Can you do that? I've been acting normal my entire marriage, I said. I'm very good at it. For the next 4 months, I became the perfect wife. I cooked Mark's favorite meals. I attended his firm's functions, smiling and charming partners. I decreased my work hours, telling everyone I wanted to focus on my marriage. Meanwhile, Hannah worked her magic. The Charleston account, just the tip of the iceberg. Mark had been systematically moving money for almost a year. Cryptocurrency accounts, offshore holdings in the Caymans, a real estate LLC that owned 3 rental properties I'd never heard of, investment accounts in Dylan's name that were clearly Mark's money. He's been planning this for at least 18 months, Hannah told me during one of our coffee meetings. The transfer started small, testing to see if he'd notice. When you didn't, he got bolder. How much? So far, about 2.3 million moved out of traceable accounts. But Jessica, that's not the interesting part. What's the interesting part? He's been billing extra hours to clients and pocketing the difference. The firm doesn't know. That's embezzlement. I stared at her. He's stealing from his own firm. About $500,000 over 2 years. Small amounts, hard to notice unless you're looking. But it's there. Why would he risk his career like that? Hannah gave me a pitying look. Because he thinks he's smarter than everyone else. Because he's never faced consequences. Because he genuinely believes you're too stupid to catch him. That night, Mark came home with flowers. Roses. I hated roses. They reminded me of funeral homes. But Mark had never bothered to learn my favorite flower in 15 years of marriage. What's the occasion? I asked, putting them in water. Can't a man bring his wife flowers? Of course. I kissed his cheek. They're beautiful. He pulled me close, nuzzling my neck. I was thinking we should take a vacation. Just the 2 of us. Maybe Europe? That sounds wonderful. When? Next month. I can clear my schedule. Next month, right when Hannah predicted he'd make his final moves. Perfect, I said. I'll start looking at hotels. He smiled, that boyish grin that used to make my heart flutter. Now it just made me sad. When had he become this person? Or had he always been this person, and I'd just been too young and in love to see it? Over the next few weeks, Mark became the husband he'd never been. Attentive, affectionate, present. He brought flowers, took me to dinner, even asked about my business. You know, he said one night over wine, I've been thinking, maybe you should take a break from work. We have plenty of money. You could focus on other things. Other things? Travel, hobbies, whatever makes you happy. My work makes me happy. His jaw tightened slightly. Of course, I just meant you work so hard. You deserve to relax. That's sweet, I said. Maybe after our Europe trip. He relaxed. After Europe? Perfect. The day before our supposed departure, I was packing when Mark walked into the bedroom. Jess, he said, his voice strange. We need to talk. I looked up from my suitcase, my face carefully neutral. Is everything okay? No, yes. He sat on the bed, running his hands through his hair. This is hard. I sat beside him. What's wrong? I want a divorce. There it was. The words I'd been expecting for months. I let them hang in the air for a moment, then squeezed his hand. Okay, I said simply. He blinked. Okay, if that's what you want, Mark, I won't fight you. You won't. No, we've been growing apart for years. If you're unhappy, then yes, let's divorce. He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. This clearly wasn't going according to his script. I've already spoken to a lawyer, he said carefully. Drew up papers. I think we can do this amicably. Of course. Should I get my own lawyer? If you want, but really, we can keep this simple. Split things down the middle. Down the middle of what remained after he'd hidden everything he meant. That sounds fair, I said. When do you want to do this? I thought, tomorrow. We can meet at my lawyer's office. Perfect. What time? He named a time. I nodded. Then I went back to packing. You're still packing? He asked. Well, I assume the Europe trip is off, but I might take a solo vacation. Clear my head. Right. Of course. He stood awkwardly. Jess, you're being very calm about this. Would you prefer if I cried? Screamed? Threw things? No. No, I expected more of a reaction. I'm 40 years old, Mark. We've been married 15 years. If it's not working, it's not working. No point in dramatics. He left the room looking distinctly unsettled. That night, I called Hannah. Tomorrow. His lawyer's office at 2 p.m. Perfect. I'll see you in court. The next day, I dressed carefully. Not the designer suit Mark would expect, but a simple dress I'd bought off the rack. Understated. Forgettable. The kind of thing a stupid wife would wear to her divorce proceedings. Mark's lawyer's office was exactly what I'd expected. All leather and dark wood, designed to intimidate. Mark was already there with his brother Dylan and his lawyer, Richard Steinberg. Jessica, Richard said smoothly. Thank you for coming. As Mark explained, we're hoping to keep this simple. Of course, I said. I just want what's fair. Excellent. I've drawn up a preliminary agreement. Basically, you'll split all marital assets equally. He pushed a stack of papers toward me. I pretended to read them, though Hannah had already walked me through what would be there. A list of assets that conveniently excluded everything Mark had hidden. This seems incomplete, I said. Incomplete? Richard frowned. Well, I don't see the Charleston accounts. Mark went very still. Or the cryptocurrency holdings. Or the Cayman accounts. Or the rental properties in the LLC. I don't know what you're talking about, Mark said, but his voice had gone up an octave. Really? That's strange. I pulled out my phone. Because I have screenshots of you texting Dylan about, what was it? Making sure the stupid bitch gets nothing. Dylan's face went white. I believe that's inadmissible, Richard started. In court, maybe, but we're not in court. We're just having a friendly conversation about divorce terms. Jess, Mark said, trying for reasonable. I don't know what you think you know. I know about the $2.3 million you've moved in the last year. I know about the embezzlement from your firm. That's slander. Richard interrupted. No, that's facts, which I've documented extensively, with the help of my forensic accountant. Right on cue, the door opened. Hannah walked in, followed by my lawyer, Catherine Walsh, one of the best divorce attorneys in Oregon. Gentlemen, Catherine said pleasantly, I believe we need to discuss the real terms of this divorce. This is an ambush, Richard sputtered. No, I said. This is consequence. Mark spent a year planning to leave me with nothing. I spent 4 months making sure he couldn't. Hannah opened her briefcase and began laying out documents, bank statements, transfer records, screenshots of texts between Mark and Dylan discussing hiding assets, records of the embezzled funds. As you can see, Catherine said, Mr. Chen has systematically defrauded both his wife and his employer. Now we can handle this 2 ways. We can go to court, where all of this becomes public record. His firm finds out about the embezzlement. The IRS finds out about the tax evasion on those hidden accounts. The state bar finds out about the ethical violations. Or, Richard asked weakly, or Mr. Chen agrees to a more equitable distribution. Say 75% of all assets hidden and declared to my client, plus alimony, plus covering all legal fees. That's extortion, Mark exploded. No, I said quietly. That's the price of thinking I was stupid. You texted your brother that you'd leave me with nothing. You bragged about how I'd never figure it out. You called me a stupid bitch who was only good for cooking and cleaning. I never. February 15th, 3:47 p.m. Hannah read from her notes. She's so pathetic, still cooking my favorite dinners while I'm moving money, like a dog that doesn't know it's about to be put down. I'd cried when I first read that text. Now I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. March 22nd, 1:15 p.m. The stupid bitch actually asked about accounts. Fed her some bullshit about market volatility. She bought it because she buys everything. Can't wait to see her face when she realizes she's getting nothing. Stop, Mark whispered. April 10th, 5:23 p.m. Dylan, I'm telling you, she has no idea. Probably planning what to cook me for dinner while I'm planning my escape. God, I can't wait to be free of her pathetic neediness. Each word was a nail in the coffin of Mark's plan. You were watching me, Mark asked. No, you were sloppy. You used your work phone for personal texts. Your firm backs everything up. Hannah subpoenaed the records. That's illegal. No, that's discovery, Catherine said, which we would have gotten in the divorce proceedings anyway. We just got a head start. Richard was sweating now. We need to discuss this privately. Of course, Catherine said. But let me be clear. This offer expires when we leave this room. After that, we file criminal charges for embezzlement, IRS notification for tax evasion, state bar complaint for ethical violations, and a very public, very messy divorce that will destroy what's left of Mr. Chen's career. We stepped out. Through the door, I could hear Mark screaming at Richard, at Dylan, at the situation. Good. 20 minutes later, Richard emerged. My client agrees to your terms. All of them. All of them. We spent the next 3 hours hammering out details. Mark would transfer all hidden assets back. I would get 75% of everything. He would pay alimony for 10 years. He would cover all legal fees. And Catherine added, he'll write a letter of resignation to his firm citing personal reasons. No mention of the embezzlement, provided he pays back every penny with interest. Fine, Mark spat. Whatever. Just fine. As we finalized the paperwork, Mark stared at me. How long have you known? Since the day you started, I said. That receipt from Charleston, you left it in your pocket. I do the laundry, remember? The thing I'm too stupid to stop doing. Why did you say anything? Because I wanted to see how far you'd go, how much contempt you really had for me. Turns out, it was bottomless. Jess, don't apologize. Don't explain. Don't justify. Just sign the papers and let's be done. He signed. Each signature looked like it physically hurt him. As we prepared to leave, Dylan finally spoke. You destroyed him. No, I said. He destroyed himself. I just documented it. He was trying to protect his assets. Any man would. Any man would what? Steal from his wife? Embezzle from his firm? Plan for a year to leave his spouse destitute while she cooked his dinners and washed his clothes. Dylan had no answer. Outside the office, Hannah and Catherine flanked me. You did great, Catherine said. How do you feel? Free, I said and meant it. For the first time in 15 years, I feel free. What's next? Hannah asked. First, I'm going to Europe, alone, to celebrate. Then I'm going to expand my business, my little business that's now worth more than Mark's career ever was. And then I'm going to live, without cooking someone else's favorite meals, without pretending to be stupider than I am, without apologizing for my success. The best revenge, Catherine said. No, I corrected. The best justice. Revenge would have been destroying him for sport. This was just holding up a mirror and letting him see who he really was. 6 months later, I ran into Mark at a coffee shop. He was sitting alone, laptop open, wearing a suit that had seen better days. Jessica, he said, standing awkwardly. Mark, you look good. I did look good. I'd just returned from expanding my business to Seattle. I was wearing a designer suit, one I bought with my own money, not his. I was happy in a way I hadn't been in years. Thank you. I'm sorry. For everything, for underestimating you. For trying to, for all of it. I know. Do you think? He stopped, started again. Do you think we could have worked it out, if I hadn't? If you hadn't tried to financially abandon me while calling me stupid? No, Mark. Because the problem wasn't the money. It was that you were capable of doing it at all. Of smiling at me over dinner while planning to destroy me. That's not something you work out. That's something you run from. He nodded, defeated. For what it's worth, you were never stupid. I was the stupidest person in our marriage. Yes, I agreed. You were. I left him there with his lukewarm coffee and his regrets. I had a business to run, a life to live, and no time for men who mistook quiet competence for stupidity. The forensic accountant had found all the money. But I found something worth more: myself. And as Mark learned, that was the one asset he could never hide, steal, or diminish. It was mine. It had always been mine. I just had to be smart enough to claim it.